Hello, this is Mr. Nelson, and I'm going to be recording this video for you guys today. We are working on lesson 6.1, multiplying integers. Alright, so let's start with this first problem. It is 3 times 3. So in words, what we're actually saying is we have 3 groups of 3. So we have 3 groups of 3. And that is going to look like, well, here's a group of 3, and they're positive. Okay, here's another group of 3. That's my second group of 3. And then here's my third group of 3. So I've got 3 groups of 3. Now if I count 3 groups of 3 up, that ends up being 9. That's a positive 9. And so our algorithm, or our paper and pencil trick, is when you have a positive times a positive, the answer is going to equal a positive. Alright, we're used to that one. Now let's look at something new. We have 2 times negative 4, 2 times the opposite of 4. Okay? So, this is saying I've got 2 groups of negative 4. 2 groups of negative 4. So, here's one group of negative 4. See, I got 4 negatives. And here's another group of negative 4. So altogether, I've got negative 8. Alright, so the algorithm for this one is when I have a positive times a negative, or a negative times a positive, I get a negative. So a positive times a negative equals a negative. Positive times a negative equals a negative. Alright, and then finally I've got negative 3 times negative 2, or the opposite of 3 times the opposite of 2. Okay, so with this one, I've got, the answer is going to be the opposite of, so in words, it's the opposite of 3 groups of negative 2. The opposite of 3 groups of negative 2. So I'm going to put the opposite of sign right there. And I'm going to put 3 groups of negative 2. 1, 2, 3, negative, negative. So I had 3 of those. 3 groups of negative 2. 3 groups of negative 2. So it's the opposite of 3 groups. 1, 2, 3. Pickle shoes. Get rid of these.
Pickle shoes?
Yeah, pickle shoes. Yeah. There we go. Get rid of those. So it's 3 groups of negative 2. So negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. Alright. That is 6. So it's the opposite of, and I've got negative 6 chips. So what is the opposite of negative 6? The opposite of negative 6 is 6. So it's a positive answer. Alright, so our algorithm here, our trick, anytime we have a negative times a negative, that's going to equal a positive. And here's why. It's saying a negative times a negative is like saying the opposite of 3 groups of negative 2. So that's why. So let's look at these example problems right here. Negative 5 times negative 3. Let's look at our algorithm. A negative times a negative is a positive. Our answer is going to be positive. So I got 5 groups of 3. So this is like saying the opposite of 5 groups of negative 3, which is 15. Okay, now I've got a positive times a negative. I look at my algorithm, positive times a negative. That's going to be a negative. So this is saying, what is 7 groups of negative 2? Well, that's negative 14. All right, and negative 8 times 4. Well, I could also say it's 4 groups of negative 8, or it's the opposite of 8 groups of 4. Either way, it's going to be negative, and 8 times 4 is 32. Okay, so we're going to multiply like normal, and then this will tell us the sign. Positive times a positive is a positive. This explains what it looks like. Positive times a negative is a negative, and a negative times a negative is positive, and these pictures explain why. Okay, so I've got like a little word problem here. Johnny lost $2 every day for a week. How much money did Johnny lose? Okay. Well, Johnny lost $2. We can represent that with a negative 2. And he lost it every day for a week. Well, there's 7 days in a week, so I'm going to multiply by 7. Okay? So negative 2 times 7. If I look at my algorithm, I've got a positive times a negative. That equals a negative. Okay? So I've got 7 groups of 2, or the opposite of 2 groups of 7. But 2 times 7 equals, negative 2 times 7 equals negative 14. So Johnny lost negative $14. All right. Sorry, Johnny. Keep up with your money. All right, bring your notes to class, and I will see you in class.